Yep.
All right, good morning.
Yeah.
Good morning to everyone we have here in the fellowship hall. Good morning to you if you're watching live. If you're going to watch this live later, hello and thank you. Happy Easter. Good to see everyone here. I actually wore color today. Usually I wear black, and so I thought, it's Easter, I'm going to wear some color. I had to really look hard in my closet to find some color, but I did. So, okay.
That's why I wore this
That's a lot of color. I like it.
for Easter.
Yeah. So we are going to continue today with boundaries. And first we're going to just take just a couple of minutes and kind of check in and get centered and bring ourselves here. So if you feel comfortable, if you would close your eyes. Take a nice deep breath. Hang on, let me turn this on. There. All right, let's try that. All right, take a nice deep breath in and release. Take another nice deep breath in and release. Bring your thoughts back to this moment. Feel your feet on the floor. Feel the seat that you're sitting on. Allow yourself to notice the air around you. We're grateful for this time together. We're grateful for the opportunity to come and share our experience, strength, and hope with each other. And we learn things that are going to help us in our lives now and to come, help our relationships, and set boundaries so that we can boost our own self-interest and our self-worth and recognize that we deserve that and people around us also deserve that. And that helps both our relationships on either side. So it is. Amen. All right. So we're going to kind of just recap just a little bit. We talked about boundaries. Most of you were here last week. If you weren't, one of the things we talked about, Brene Brown says that a boundary is simply what's okay and what's not okay. That sounds really simple. If it were that it were that simple to have boundaries and set those and keep those, as simple as, you know what, that's not okay. So, and we talked about some of the reasons that we don't set boundaries, because it feels rude, or it feels selfish, or someone we've been called selfish. We feel guilty about setting boundaries. We're afraid we're going to disappoint someone. We're afraid we're going to hurt someone's feelings. And we talked about how boundaries are not about asking the other person to change their behavior. You're telling them this is okay with me, or this is not okay with me, and it's about what am I going to do in this situation if you choose to cross that boundary that I've set with you. We're not trying to make someone else wrong by setting a boundary and say what you're doing is wrong. It's just this is not okay. It may be fine with James if someone comes over and smokes in his house.
It's
not, just in case you're wondering, if you're going to change his house. It's not okay. But it wouldn't be okay with me. It's not okay to smoke in my car. You know, I've had where I picked someone up and they've had a cigarette and we're like, we've got to put that out, we can't smoke in my car. So that's not making it wrong. It's just that's not okay. That doesn't work for me. One of the things also, one of the reasons we also don't set boundaries is that we're afraid of what people are going to think. If I set this boundary, they're going to think I'm difficult. Are they going to think that I'm rude, or that they don't like me, or I'm afraid they're not going to like me if I set this boundary? What if I set this boundary and they don't want to be around me anymore? And it's really, really uncomfortable to set a boundary, even for people who have set boundaries, really strong boundaries. It's uncomfortable to set those boundaries, but because you don't know how the other person's going to respond to it. And it's also, though, uncomfortable if we set a boundary and then we don't enforce it. That's also really uncomfortable. So it's which one are you willing to? Which one is going to be better for your mental health and your well-being? Which uncomfortableness is it going to be? So instead of setting the boundary, we just numb it. We just pretend like it's, stick our head in the sand. We just pretend like that it's not happening. We get resentful. This past week, I watched someone set a boundary. Actually, that person didn't set the boundary. Someone else set the boundary, and that included them in what the situation was. Good morning. And I watched them just agonize, and that's not an exaggeration, over this boundary that had been set because they were so afraid of what the consequence might be for having set this in motion. And I mean agonized, just so fearful and just distraught and distressed because this boundary had been set because of the fear of what might have happened. Did any of that happen that they were afraid of? No. None of that actually happened. So they were pre-painting all of this stuff that, as Sue says, of all this stuff that might have happened, and none of it actually did. Even if it does, which sometimes it's going to happen. They were afraid with this boundary, that person was going to be really angry. They were going to walk in and blow a situation up and get really angry. And sometimes that does happen. And that person is either going to get over it or they're not. When you set that boundary, it's up to you to decide to set that boundary and hold on to it and make sure that you enforce it. So one of the things that we've discovered is that, and we know, is that guilt is a powerful motivator to get someone to conform. You look at a lot of religions, and that's exactly what they use. Is they use guilt and shame to motivate people and to get people to conform to what it is how they want them to act. And so sometimes when we set a boundary, someone will use guilt to try and get us to step back on that boundary. Because who benefits? We talked about this. Who benefits when you don't set a boundary?
The person walking on you.
That's right. The person that's walking on you, they benefit when you're not setting a boundary. And I listen to a lot of Melissa Urbane. She has got a book on boundaries, and she's got several talks that you can listen to on YouTube. And one of the things she said was that when you set a boundary, what you're doing is you're removing a privilege that person wasn't entitled to in the first place. And I thought, wow, yeah, that's exactly right. So I read Dr. Romana Durvasula, I think, I'm not sure if that's how I pronounce it. And she talked about 9 signs of poor boundaries, which are some of the consequences that we have when we don't really set healthy boundaries. Okay? And one of them is the inability to make decisions. So you feel torn between what other people want and what we really want. And it's hard to make a decision when we feel like something bad is going to happen if we make that decision, if we set that boundary. And we're constantly judging our decisions and how that's going to make someone else feel. And we can feel completely and totally paralyzed about making any decision because we're constantly thinking about what this other person is going to do.
Can you say that quote again, please?
Which one?
Just now.
That I just said? Said that we're constantly judging our decisions on how it will make someone else feel. And then we can feel completely paralyzed in making our own decision, any decision. And I get that. I can remember I've done enough work that I'm not that way now. It still occasionally creeps up. But I can remember that. Just second guessing, just constantly second guessing every decision I make. Because, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if it's the wrong decision? Abraham talks about it's never a wrong decision. It's just a decision that's either going to teach you something or it's going to work in the situation that you're in. But it's not necessarily the wrong decision. Uh-oh. Am I missing a page? This is not. Oh, there it is. Okay, never mind. I got it. I'm good. We're good. Okay. Number 2, people pleasing. We're painting ourselves into a corner by doing or accepting something that we don't want, and we deny our self-interest. We'll be aware of the dynamic, but also some secondary gain from a person being a people pleaser. And I read this one. I thought. So when you're a people pleaser, you're the nice person. The people you're pleasing, they're saying, "Oh man, aren't they great? Look at them. They are so helpful. They were so wonderful." And so they're reinforcing that something that may actually be harmful to the person that's being a people pleaser. People pleaser, their buy-in is that they get to walk through life as the nice person. Ouch. Yeah. But that completely, it is. It's that completely, those who benefit from you being a people pleaser, they're going to give you all those nice little compliments and those little pats on the back about how great you are. Oh my gosh, look at this. Look how wonderful you are. And because they're benefiting from it.
Yeah.
Number 3, excessive fatigue. We're so focused on what other people want and make sure that they are being taken care of, that we're just absolutely exhausted because we're not taking care of ourselves. Number 4, endless guilt about small things. Kind of goes along with the other. Did I do that right? Should I have said something different? Why didn't I say this, or why didn't I do that? Again, guilt is a powerful motivator to get people to comply with what we want. And number 5, a lost sense of self. We're absorbed in other people's emotions, their lives, their bad days become your bad days. We stop doing what we want and need to ensure that the other person is taken care of. And that can also happen in the job, where you're just constantly, you're taking care of this and you're taking on that and you're doing this and doing that to make sure that everyone else is okay. I think I talked about that last week about being in a relationship for 20 years with someone who was controlling, and I completely lost who I was. I had no idea who I was when I was done with that, out of that relationship, because I had been so focused on making sure that she was okay, and that I was trying to do everything that she wanted and she needed, and I completely lost what I wanted and had stopped doing the things that I wanted to do. Oversharing. When a person overshares, they may share information with someone where they haven't sufficiently established trust. Remember, we talked about Brene Brown saying that we share things and we're vulnerable with with people who have earned the right to hear our stories. So people who overshare, they may cause, that may be caused with them feeling overwhelmed or dominated in a situation, and oversharing may be a way to establish an attachment or a need for connection. We'll see this as a pattern with people with a history of trauma, that oversharing. And also they have a tendency to blame themselves if they overshare with someone, and then they use that to turn that around and use that to hurt them. So you share with someone who's not safe because you're trying to make that connection, and then they turn that around and throw that back in your face at some point, just to hurt you or to embarrass you. And I think I've had that happen where I talked to someone and I told them something specific. This is never okay to talk about this in front of other people. I can talk to you about this, but it's not okay because it's really embarrassing to me. And the same day, we were in a crowd of people, and she brought that up. That exact issue that I had said, please don't ever, don't talk about this in front of other people. She brought that exact issue up in front of about 7 or 8 people in the group. And so I knew that person is no longer safe for me to share things with. Resentment toward other people because they've set healthy boundaries. And then you're resentful. You're annoyed that you're overextended and other people aren't. And if they aren't setting any boundaries and enforcing them, then we become resentful and frustrated, and we feel taken advantage of. Why am I the only one that's doing things? How come everybody else is not doing things? And this feeling may come because someone else has better boundaries, or because they are benefiting from your poor boundaries. As long as you're doing it, they don't have to. And number 8, passive aggressiveness. This one I had to go ouch on this one too. I recognize some of the things that I do on this one. Passive aggressive people do not communicate directly about their needs or wants, their disappointments or their frustrations. We may do something such as stonewall or not communicate. We make digs at someone. Maybe it must be nice to live your life since you don't have take any of the responsibility for any of this. But it's nice to get to come home and sit down on the couch and not have to worry about getting dinner ready. Those types of things. Instead of being able to say, this is a lot and I'm feeling overwhelmed, can we figure out a way so that we can share some of this? For people with poor boundaries, communicating directly is a struggle, asking for what we need or want. And the frustration may very well be the frustration with ourselves because we've overextended, because we've taken on things. And I had to think about that, and I thought about that with my kids when my kids were growing up, is how often I was frustrated with myself, and I was angry with myself because I had a deadline that was looming. You know how that is when you've got something that you need to get done, and it's just like this invisible pressure because you know it's coming up. You got to get it done. You got to get it done, and you're not getting it done. You're doing everything other. Maybe that's just me.
No, it isn't.
You're doing everything other than what you need to be doing, and it's that constant, that pressure, and then I get frustrated with myself, and then I would take it out on the kids because I was angry at me. And so that frustration, any little thing that they did, that frustration would just mount, and then I would just blow over them and take it out on them. And I recognize that now. I recognize that, and occasionally I will still do that. And Sue, unfortunately, my wife Sue gets the brunt of it, and has no idea what's happening. And she's really good. Fortunately for me, she's really good at saying, what is wrong with you? what is happening right now, something's going on, and she doesn't accept, I'm fine, nothing, I'm fine, everything's fine, and she doesn't accept that, which is good for me. It also, one of the things that I recognize too is that when you have been in a relationship that is controlling, and you feel guilty for having your needs, it becomes harder to express that your needs, and I think that was one of the things. And we as women, and men, I'm going to have you take a step back and really think about this, really look at this and really think about this. But we as women, especially in this society, have been conditioned not to have needs. Especially because it's been our job, and the commercials and the TV shows and the movies have conditioned us that our needs are not important. That you stop and we were watching or listening to. Remember the Schoolhouse Rock? Remember all of those? And there's conjunction, and there's interjections. And so this great little, and the kids love that one. And so we listen to that one a lot. But one of the middle ones is where there's a woman and there's a guy who's pursuing her, and she's like, "Oh, I've never been so insulted in my life. No, I don't want this. Get away from me." And then all of a sudden he's persistent, and then she's like, "Hey, you're kind of cute." And this was something that we skipped that one. We run by that one because what that's telling our granddaughter is, if somebody is persistent enough, even if you're feeling this way, when they're persistent, you need to allow them to go ahead and cross that boundary, and you need to say yes. And we've been conditioned as women and moms. My gosh, how many shows do you hear, or how many people do you hear say, "My mom had 2 jobs, she had 3 jobs. She sacrificed everything so that I could do this, and so I could be this." And this is the mantle is how selfless can you be so that your kids can be better. And I thought about that, and it's like, if my mom did that, her mom did that, and then her mom did that, and then I teach my kids to do that, I teach my daughter to do that, then she grows up and she has a child, and then she does that. Who gets to live their life? Instead, I want to teach my daughter that I'm gonna do for you. I'm gonna take care of you, and at the same time, I'm gonna take care of me. I'm gonna set boundaries, and I'm gonna take care of me, because I want you to see that you get to have a life, that you get to live your life, and you get to set boundaries, and you get to you hold those boundaries. You don't let people cross those boundaries, because their needs are more important than yours. Because that's what we're teaching our daughters. That's what we're teaching our granddaughters when we do that, and then we model that for them. So number 9 is fear of rejection or abandonment. So if I don't do this, then what? Then these people aren't going to show up the next time. This person is going to leave my life. Poor boundaries, they give someone a sense of control. They feel that they can get ahead of or avoid being abandoned or rejected, whether that is a valid fear or not. They will keep doing what is asked of them to keep from being rejected or abandoned. So this feel like they're going to be able to get ahead of it, just waiting for that next shoe to drop. So I'm going to take control, and I'm going to do something so that I feel like I have a little bit of control of it, because I know it's coming, whether that's valid or not. I think this is gonna come, I think they're gonna be upset and they're gonna leave me, so I'm gonna do something, whatever I need to do in order for that not to happen. Okay, so, like I said, Melissa Urbane, she's got a book that says about how to hold and set boundaries. One of the things that she says is to set a boundary that you can hold. If you set a boundary and you don't hold it in the face of pressure and pushback, then that person is going to be more convinced than ever that their needs are valid and that they're going to double down on it next time that you try to set it. If you set a boundary and that you know is healthy and reasonable and would improve the relationship, and you get pushback, whether it's in the form of gaslighting or peer pressure, exclusion, the silent treatment, whatever manipulative tactic, you have two choices. You either hold that boundary for the sake of your own good and your own mental health, which is affirming and affirms your own self-worth and your own value. It shows that you can be trusted and that it keeps you safe. Remember we talked about it feeling like you can be trusted. Yes, Terry.
Doesn't that kind of go with the live your life for somebody and live it for you type of mentality? That live your life or somebody will live it for you.
Yes, live your life for someone will live it for you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. So it shows that you can be trusted and it keeps you safe, or you can back down on that boundary. And then you've taught them that if they push hard enough, you're going to give in. Comments? Okay. When we set a boundary, it often means that like I said, that we are revoking a privilege that person was never meant to have. If you don't hear anything else today, I want you to hear this, okay? If nothing else sticks with you, I want you to hear this. Most importantly, if you don't hold a boundary, you have just taught yourself that you can't trust yourself to advocate for yourself.
Amen.
You just taught yourself that maybe your needs don't matter as much as someone else's. And such a profound message to absorb into our bodies, this idea that if I set this healthy boundary and then I didn't hold it. Okay, Zach wants me to repeat it. If you don't hold that boundary, you just taught yourself that you can't trust yourself to advocate for yourself. You just taught yourself that maybe your needs don't matter as much as someone else's. And that is such a profound message to hold into our bodies. Because it's this idea that I set this boundary, and it was a healthy boundary, and it was a reasonable boundary, but that I didn't hold it, because my needs don't matter as much as someone else's. Yeah, Jim?
Yeah, is it on? Okay, am I gonna close enough? Can you hear me?
Is it,
That's just one way out.
oh, it's on.
It's on.
Yeah, I don't
All right,
know.
well, that's gonna be it then.
Yeah,
Okay.
I guess just speak loudly.
I want to kind of figure this here. I want to do this because, okay, I'm married. We have our daughters. They live within 10 miles of us. We've got a couple of them, well, one of them for sure that is pretty, depends on her mother way too much. And what happens is that she won't ask me for anything because I've already let her know where I'm coming from. But then her mom, or my wife, I'm like, God, I've done this and I've done this and I've done, can you just go over there and do this for me? And then I'll just like, Luann, you're the one doing this. I'm not doing this. And just because I don't want to see her hurt herself any more than she already is, I'll just go over there and I get it done, get it over with, and come back home. So am I, in a sense, because you know, after I've done that, my daughter, she doesn't break the rules. Okay, she knows how I am, and that's good. But then she's always kind of shocked that I show up in her mother's place and I'll do this stuff for her. Okay, and so I guess I'm okay. You know, it's just sometimes you whenever you know somebody that well, and you know that the damage is being done to them by them making these continued decisions, okay, and there's nothing you can do to stop them.
Well, you could stop making those decisions.
Oh, I don't make any decisions. She makes the decisions.
Well, but
But you
anytime.
go.
Oh no, I'm telling you, and she'll still go do it. And then we spend 2 days her not liking me.
Okay.
All right? Because she's going to get even with me because I wouldn't go do it, or you won't help your daughter type thing, right? But usually she's got to go right to the wall before, you know, she's either hurting, there's some kind of a trauma, and her back killing her or something, because you got back problems, I'm just saying. And so you know, she's someone that I've lived with for 50 years, and I love her to death. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm trying to leave her. It's just sometimes I just wish there was something a person could say to someone like that would make them stop, because she is a total and complete enabler that has allowed these things to go on in her life. And I've never agreed to any of it, but I can't stop it.
So, go ahead. Bring that back there.
I was gonna have an example of my own, but if you wanna answer him first, it's fine, I can wait.
No, go ahead.
So, my first thought, right, the first thing I was taught is these are control devices, control is an illusion. And that was at age 11 or 12, and that's coming from when I was 4 to 6. My mother was such a crackhead that she would not feed us, clothe us. We were alone for weeks in the apartment, or babysitters that would rape us, beat us. I was thrown out of a car at 40 miles an hour. Man. Control device, when you can't control your environment as a child, I thought was an illusion, right? So if it doesn't exist, or it's a thought to every other human, then as a child, the easiest thing I can do is manipulate my environment in order to get the outcome I need, because physically, in some form or fashion, I'm inept. Wrong or right? Okay? So if that is the primary thought of a child of a survivalist, right, raised to the point where he is feeding his own siblings and taking the vitamins until I starved myself, because they ate the food while I ate the vitamins. And that's my 4 to 6. Now, by the time I realized in my 20s, right, I was dealing with my wife, who I said I didn't want my daughter's ears to be pierced at 3 months old for Easter pictures, or whatever the fuck it was, because I'm not the best at math. Pardon my French. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, okay, that's fine, I put my foot down. She ain't getting her ears pierced, that's her damn choice, not my wife's. Right? In my head, I'm not having this conversation with her already, because I know she's country. And if I tell her something ain't her choice, it's going to be her fucking choice. I already know that. I don't want to have this conversation. I know where it leads. I ain't dumb. but I sure in the hell don't want to sit and argue about this for weeks. So, and I was like, I'm good. 2 days later, she just came back from grandma's with her ears pierced. Well, shit, here we go. Now I'm going to have this conversation every damn time. After about 2 years of having that conversation every time, and I'm someone, right, that reached the level where I knew I was going to be an officer in the military on a nuclear sub for engineering, and I was already trying not to look down on humanity and humble myself based on my own intelligence, choosing that through away an MIT education because I knew that would cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars by the time I was done, and I could make it free through the military. And I have tried to humble myself so much in life. It's amazing to me to watch humans inevitably fall into what you are calling walls. And then at the same time argue that those walls don't exist for other people and that we're all equal when you yourself are making us all unequal. The divisionary process goes so far it amazes me, and I plead the fifth on the rest of the things in my head.
It's hard to be in a relationship with someone when here are your boundaries, and here are theirs. Somewhere back off here that occasionally they show up. You know, one of the things that came to me was, James and I kind of did last week a what if. Well, so what if you don't go and help your daughter do this? What if you don't do this for your daughter? Then what?
Oh, they'll start making better decisions. It's just
okay,
the fact that they
but
need
what
to
is your
make
wife?
decisions.
What is your wife thinks going to happen if you don't do that for her?
I think a lot of it is that I will give into it just because I don't want to deal with the issue of the past. Yeah, because I could spend 2 days that didn't help me. You see what I'm saying?
Right. But I'm saying if you ask your wife, so your daughter needs her to pick up her laundry.
I don't care. She just always needs.
Right. So if you ask your wife, what's going to happen if you don't do that?
Oh no, that's because she already knows that this is how I feel. I just do it myself, and then she'll leave. She won't get into the argument.
Here's what I'm saying though, Jerry. Yeah. If you ask your wife, if you say, she said, so and so needs me to do her laundry, and then you say, what's your wife's name? Luann, what's going to happen if you don't do her laundry?
Yeah. Well, I've done that.
And what does she say?
Huh? I'll just do it myself. She just don't want to answer questions. It's okay. She's protecting her ability to enable. It's like an alcoholic protecting their drink.
Sure.
Okay. At the same time, I know that I have to make a decision myself every day as to whether I want to stay in this situation or not.
Right.
It is what it is. It's just that whenever we're talking about boundaries, these are those issues where boundaries are, but you can be fudged on, or you've got to deal with whatever you're thinking about, and how much pain do you want to deal with if it's somebody you can just walk away from.
Right.
It's okay. They pissed, they're not, I don't care what they are. I'm just walking away.
Right.
You can't, and you know this as well as I do, you're in a relationship, you can't just walk away.
And the thing is it's that same thing with pushing back on that boundary. And then you try to set the boundary and then they push back with the gaslighting or all of the other things, the anger or the guilt. I'm going to try and shame or guilt you into doing what I want you to do.
It's your daughter too.
Yeah.
Right. It's just, none of it, this is the problem, is that enablers are probably even worse than alcoholics. simply because they don't realize they have a problem. And they think they're just helping someone.
Yeah.
She's helping my daughter right to the point she's 47 years old and can't take care of herself yet,
Right,
okay?
right.
And you're like,
That's
whoa.
why I went to Al-Anon. For
Yeah.
that exact reason.
The insanity.
Is the insanity of it and not realizing that it was my problem. I spent all of these years trying to take care of somebody and trying to make somebody else okay, and finally, went to Al-Anon and realized that I could never be fill in the blank enough to make them okay.
Yeah, and that's the why I just pushed back on that boundary thing in a way, or I had to feel like, maybe we got a divorce after 30 years. All right, we've been together 55 years. I'm 71 years old. I ain't out there looking for another wife.
Yeah.
That's all I need is another wife, right?
So it's the point of where is your line? Where is your line of what is okay with you and what's not okay with you?
We hit it this morning again.
And what can you live with and what can't you live with?
And that's the thing, is that I guess sooner or later I will make that decision, or die, one of the two. So, yeah. Anyway, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Right.
It is what it is.
So when I look at boundaries, it's really about relationship contracts. Okay. So you have these unstated or stated agreements about how we're going to behave with each other. And so those agreements are those boundary lines that you have. Now, you may have them in your head, and the other person doesn't have them at all. Or they may have them, and you don't have them in your head. And that's when you get that's where the conflict. The key, really, for me, in terms of for my own personal and professional when I was working, was judgment raises the emotion to the point where you can't see where those lines are. They all get blurred with the emotion and the self-statements that we have in judgment, either out of shame or anger, and if we're able to say, wait a second, what's the agreement?
Mm-hmm.
And really just stick to that and just make that, and then what's the consequence of the agreement?
Mm-hmm.
And then, like you said, you gotta live with it. You gotta live with it. You either gotta, don't make it. If you're gonna be assertive, don't say, oh, well, I'm gonna do this, and then not do it.
Right.
Otherwise, you're saying, no, I didn't really do it.
Right. And, you talk about how people show up and why, we talked about why people don't set boundaries. And all of that back trauma, people are doing the best that they can. With where they are at the moment and what their past has taught them. And one of the things that Brene Brown said is that in therapy, the therapist told her that if we assume that people are doing the best that they can, then it makes our life better. If I just assume that you're doing the best that you can, it makes my life better. If we give ourselves grace to recognize that we're doing the best that we can, then it makes our lives better. And when we say, we beat ourselves up and say, gosh, I wish I had done this, I should have done that, and we beat ourselves up for the way we've shown up in the past. Like me saying, you know, I would get frustrated at myself, and then I would take it out on the kids. And I can sit and I can beat myself up and beat myself up and beat myself up about that, and I have in the past. When I recognized that had I been able to do it differently then, I would have. Now I'm able to do it differently, but at that time, that's the way, that was all I needed to do, because whatever I needed to do in order to survive, and people do whatever they need to do in order to get their needs met. Paul?
I'm gonna stand up because I don't think this thing's working.
It's not, for some reason.
So one of the most frequent things that happen to me where I feel like I've allowed that boundary to go beyond is when I'm, you know, in a phone conversation with someone or in a meeting or even just talking with someone that goes beyond what I'm able to emotionally handle or, you know, time-wise, and it doesn't have to be just because I have a meeting later or whatever. It's that I have to set that boundary for myself that, hey, I'm going to give you 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe a half an hour, maybe even an hour, whatever it is. I have to know that inside myself, and the important thing is that you state that boundary up front.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
you're coming into a conversation, you know, for instance, you know, one of my best friends, they would just talk your ear off, you know, and it's like, you know, hey, I've got 15 minutes, gotta go.
Right.
You know?
Right.
It doesn't matter if you really have to go, it's that you emotionally have to go.
Right.
And so you set the boundary ahead of time. And, you know, I'm talking with Sue about that all the time, where she expresses that, and I say, hey, you know, set the boundary.
Mm-hmm.
Set the boundary ahead of time, and that way, you know, you don't have to be emotionally distraught.
Mm-hmm. Right, and that's really key. One of the things that she talked about was the fact of setting that boundary early on. And because if you let something go on and on and on, and it's gone on for months, it's gone on for a year, and then all of a sudden you set a boundary, and this person had no idea that you had a boundary there, and all of a sudden you were really ticked off, and you're setting this firm boundary, but it's been going on for 6 months or a year. They're confused, and they're definitely going to push back on it because it's benefited them for 6 months or a year, and now all of a sudden you're setting a boundary. So it makes a big difference if you set that boundary right up front.
Yeah, I like what Paul said, which is one, you know, it's really helpful to express that boundary to the other person, but also make sure that you have set that boundary with yourself.
Yes.
And that, you know, and are committed to it is just so important.
Right. Right.
And if we feel ourselves shifting with that, that's an issue.
Right.
Then we need to talk to somebody.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Separate.
What, in a situation like that, what you need to do is set the people down that you having the conflicts with, and say, we need to have a talk, because I need to set some boundaries up so that we know where we stand, and from this day forward, I'm gonna be operating in these boundaries, and you're gonna have to learn to accept it and work with me with the boundaries, or we just can't have a relationship like this no more.
And sometimes it does come down to, you have to step back away from the boundary. One of the things that she talked about is say you have there's an issue with, you go to have over meals with your family or friends, and they talk about your diet. They talk about you're too heavy, you're too skinny, you know, why are you eating all of that? Why are you eating this, or why are you eating that? And you say, you know what, my food is not an issue that I'm going to talk about. And if they continue, then you can get up and you can leave and you can go in another room. If it still continues, every time you're around and you're around food, you're sitting down to a meal, they're having that conversation with you about, why are you eating this? My gosh, are you really going to eat all of that? Look how heavy you are. Look how much weight you've gained. You don't hang out with them around food. You know, she said one of the things that she did was, when her family got together for a meal, she would wait till the meal was over, and then she would go over after the meal was over, so that the conversation wasn't around the food. You know, she said, you know, we hear people all the time talking about your relationship status when you're especially around your family, because that dynamic, this has been your dynamic as you were growing up with your family. You get together as a family and you're still that little kid. You know? It doesn't matter if you're 70 years old, you're still that little kid, and your family dynamic is still operating in that same thing. They're still going to have these same conversations, still going to bring up all of the same stuff. And it's not about, boundaries are not about you expecting them to do something different. It's about, this is what I'm going to do. You know, that's one of the things I love about Love and Logic parenting. Love and Logic parenting is fantastic. And it works on everybody. It doesn't have to just be kids. I used to use it all the time with the inmates when I worked at the prison. And it works great, because it's not about, it's not saying, stop doing this, or blah, blah, blah. It's about, oh, I am happy to continue to let you play your video game, as long as when I ask you to do something, you do it. You know, that's not saying, hey, you do this or else you're not getting to play your video game. It's, I'm happy to let you continue to do that. And that's how you use it. It's not about you do this or you're wrong. It's about, I'm happy to take you and get ice cream. I love to go and get ice cream for kids who pick up their toys when I ask. And it makes it about what I'm going to do. And that's the whole thing with setting a boundary, is here's what I'm about. Here's what I am going to do. And you don't even have to say the part out loud of, you know, I talked last week about my ex, whose dad was just mean. And we would go, once a month we would go and visit, and he would call her names and you know, call her fat ass and just rude and just mean. Oh, you know, that's just how he is. No, that's not okay. And we didn't say, if you continue to call her, if she didn't say, if you continue to call me names, we're going to get up and leave. The next time we went down there, he started in on her again. She looked at me and said, "Are you ready to go?" And I said, "Yep." And we just got up and we left. You don't have to say that part out loud. It's really much more effective when you do it that way. With kids, there's a consequence for it. But the consequence doesn't have to be immediate. With, you know, they do something that they were not supposed to do, and it's like, oh, this is so sad. I'm gonna have to do something about this, but I don't know what. And then the next time they want to do something, you go, oh gosh, that sounds like it would be so much fun. I would love to be able to let you do that when you do the things that I asked you to do. You don't have to say that part out loud. Now, I made it seem like, and I said last week, and then he didn't do it anymore because his wife, her mom, said, look what you've done, don't you ever do that, because they're gonna get up and leave if you treat her like that. And he didn't. I made it seem like she said that and he just stopped. That's not the way it happened. That's not the way it went. It took us getting up and leaving a couple of times, and then for him to actually recognize, I really have to stop doing this. And mostly it was not because he became a better person, it was just because he didn't want to deal with the fallout from his wife, who was really mad at him for doing that. So, another thing that she says is, if I set a boundary with you, and it can't be dependent on what you choose to do. The boundary I set has to depend on me. The actions that I'm willing to take in our relationship to keep myself safe and healthy. Verbally set a boundary, that when we verbally set a boundary, we have an expectation that people are going to take our boundary and they're going to implement it. We need to behave as though we have a boundary. And that's really, really important. We have to enforce a boundary with our behavior. If you ask someone not to call you, and then they call you and you pick up the phone, your behavior is not enforcing the boundary. You're basically, what you're doing is you're telling them that it's okay for them to call you. If you told your mother-in-law not to show up unannounced, but we'd like you to call before you come over, and then she shows up unannounced, and you open the door and let her in, what have you just told her?
It's okay.
It's okay. It's okay. There's a book called The Gift of Fear by a guy named Gavin DeBecker. And I used this book a lot when I taught self-defense classes, because it's about listening to that instinct. And one of the things that he says is that if you tell someone no 10 times, and then the 11th time that you say yes, then you just taught them that it takes 11 times to get a yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because people who won't take no for an answer will find people who won't set a boundary and who won't say no. So if you continue to not set boundaries, and you're so frustrated because you're attracting these people who are takers, who are going to push your boundaries and are not going to adhere to boundaries, and you're frustrated with that, you're going to attract more of that. It's just an interesting thing why alcoholics and people pleasers, people find each other. People who need Al-Anon and alcoholics find each other because it's that fit, and they're going to find people who will react the way they need them to react and take care of them until both parties get better and get recovery. Yes.
My next thought.
You have to speak up. I don't think that microphone's working
My
well.
next thought. Marco.
But that's what we've been having problems all day with it.
Yeah, you'll just have to speak up.
My next thought is, if the boundaries exist, right? You're stating they exist. You're psychologically aware. You're putting all these boundaries, right? What I was getting angry for as a child, what a psychologist referenced to me, is they're like a box around the mind, right? No one else can see them. You're aware that you exist. You're aware they exist. You're the mind. Now your point of reference is to make sure everyone else also knows they exist. So is your point of reference then to sit and mime out all day to everyone that they exist, or continue to a new point of function where they don't matter, exist, or are needed, so that you can freely flow without having to worry about staying in the confines of this box? Because at a certain point, he taught me that age inevitably creates that box physically in your head.
Interesting. Okay, about out of time. So, there's so much more. So much more stuff. Like I said, Melissa Urbane, she's got a book, How to Hold and Set Boundaries. Just incredible stuff. Really, really good stuff. Brene Brown also has a lot of really great stuff on setting boundaries. Okay, so thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you, and I appreciate all of the comments. I appreciate all of the feedback. And we're going to read some announcements real quick. Oh.
I will pass the basket, and if you can hear me online and you would like to give, you can go to www.unityofspringfield.org. And thank you, Mary.
Thank you. Okay, some announcements real quick. Meditation tonight at 6 p.m. and it is open to everyone. The monthly men's group will meet on Tuesday, April the 2nd at 6 p.m. for a potluck. Please bring a dish to share and discussion will follow, and all men are invited to attend. The Unity Drum Circle is the first Thursday of each month, April 4th at 6:30 p.m. Today's the last day to order a Planet Unity t-shirt. The cost is $12 and you pay for it today or when you pick it up. The volunteer sign-up sheets for Planet Unity and the yard sale are on the table in the foyer. It definitely takes a village. We need lots and lots of volunteers for this event because it's an amazing event. We're raffling off custom Kansas City cheap cornhole boards that are out there in the foyer. The tickets are $10 each, and there are only 100 tickets that are going to be sold, and we're getting right down to it. So if you want a chance to win those cornhole boards, make sure you get in there. The winner will be drawn at Planet Unity on April the 20th at 4 p.m. Next Sunday at 9:15 in the New Thought and World Religion class, Amy Burnett will present part 1 of 2 in a series entitled Emotional Intelligence and Spiritual Development. Amy's classes are always amazing. And Friendship Sunday Potluck is next Sunday, April the 7th. Bring a dish to share, and please sign up in the foyer to bring an entree, a salad, a side dish, or a dessert. And not next Sunday, but or Saturday, but the following Sunday, the 10th, is that right? Is it the 10th? I have my piece of paper in front of me. Is we are having a recycle event here in conjunction with our Earth Day event that's coming up. The recycle event, if you have paper that you need to shred, if you have metal that needs to be recycled, or electronics that need to be recycled, bring them here for that day from 9 a.m. until noon. You can bring them in and we will recycle those for you. We're going to need lots of volunteers to be here that day to show people what area they need to go to help unload vehicles and unload those things. Yes, Brenda?
What's that day again?
Saturday the 13th.
The 13th, Saturday the 13th. Thank you. Saturday the 13th. And we'll need lots of volunteers. And there's a sign-up sheet out there to volunteer. Come and be there. It's a fun day. Get to hang out with your peeps, and usually it's a really nice day. But anything that we can get that doesn't go in the landfill is good for us. Also, the metal recycling, we're going to take that and recycle it ourselves, and then all of that money that we get from that will go for that. Shredding, if you have boxes that you need shredded, it's $5 for just like a regular sized box. What are those?
Banker's box.
Banker's box, thank you. It's $5 to have that shredded. So come and join us that, and we would appreciate all of the volunteers that are going to show up that day. And our March Earth Care is to sharply diminish our use of paper by purchasing reusable dishes. We have collected enough money to cover all of the total cost of all of our dishes. So thank you to everyone who donated for that. That was awesome. And thank you to everyone who ordered a lily. Please remember to take it home with you today if you ordered one, and there are a few extras, so if you didn't order one and you would like to have one, then just let Lisa know. All right, thank you again, and we are going to circle up in the back.